The Democratic Alliance says President Cyril Ramaphosa needs to account to Parliament for COVID-19 allegations of corruption. The party's interim leader, John Steenhuisen, has called for a parliamentary snap debate on the issue. This as several government officials are being probed for alleged tender corruption linked to the procurement, especially of personal protective equipment. John Steenhuisen, interim leader of the DA, joining us by Skype from Cape Town this afternoon. John, a very good afternoon to you. Good to have you on. So, you want this snap debate where the president would essentially account for some of the allegations around COVID-19. One wonders, what are you hoping to hear that's different from what has come through, for example, in his newsletter today?
Well, it's very difficult to take what's in the newsletter seriously. I mean, the president's written about corruption for many, many years. He's been reduced to a Dr. Doolittle, talks a lot about it, doesn't do much about it. The president promised the nation in March, in no uncertain terms, that he would be ensuring that no COVID money would be misappropriated through corruption maladministration. We now sit in August, and we have now had millions upon millions of rands of public money that has been channeled through corrupt activities into the pockets of connected individuals, including right under the president's nose in his own office. The president is accountable to Parliament. He made that undertaking publicly, and he must now come account about what he's going to do about it and when we're going to start seeing some of these individuals actually being held accountable and going to jail.
Let me put a point to you that I put to Caesar Pamela from COSATU, that the president will then respond and say he signed, for example, the SIU proclamation. The investigative authorities in this country will then deal with the issues as they progress. It's not the president's duty to enforce arrests or put people on trial. How do you respond?
Well, the president made an undertaking, and he must be held accountable to those undertakings. So here's the thing. At the beginning of the crisis, we made a suggestion to the president, knowing full well that this was going to happen. If you can skim money off Nelson Mandela's funeral, of course, this PPE money and COVID-19 funding was going to be low-hanging fruit for corrupt individuals who put themselves forward. So we made a constructive suggestion to the president that he established at the time an Inspector General of COVID funding in the country who would be responsible for ensuring every cent of the money that went out under the COVID banner was going to where it was intended, and that there was none of this contract skimming that we've seen taking place. The president chose not to take that advice. He chose to go his own route, but he made the undertaking. We've got to move away from a situation where we have a president who stands and says things, but then we never see any concomitant action as a result of them. Not a single high-profile politician is in jail yet. Not a single person in the state capture travail, where the president promised us for years where we're going to see action. Watch the space was his word. Well, we're watching a lot of space, not much action. And it's the same individuals in state capture, like Numbula Mokanyane and Ace Magashule and others, whose names pop up now in this. The time for talk is over. It's now time for the president to put action by his words, and that's what Parliament must compel him to do.
Again, the president will say, well, he does not run the state capture inquiry. It's chaired by the Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, and it's got a mandate that expires, and that after that we'll hopefully see the ball move forward. We know that there's now this agreement with the NPA, for example, that's going to allow it to tap into resources from the State Capture Commission of Inquiry, including information and personnel. Is that an encouraging sign for you?
Well, until you fund the NPA properly, it's going to make whoever they cooperate with very, very difficult. You've got to have what we had under the Scorpions was an interdisciplinary prosecuting authority that was able to not only prosecute the cases, but to build them from the ground up so that you had solid cases that were able to go to prosecution. Unfortunately, and I'm sure Ms. Batoy and others would tell you exactly the same thing, with the financial constraints facing the NPA, it is highly unlikely that they are going to be able to deal with some of the more intricate webs of corruption. And it is amazing that we have media houses, people like Pauli van Wyk and others, who are able to go out and get all the information, to get the paper trails, and to follow the money, and yet we sit with an NPA who's not able to do that. If we want to have proper prosecutions, the president must put his money where his mouth is and give Mrs. Batoy some serious money so that we can hire serious investigators, and we can get lawyers and forensic accountants in to prosecute these individuals. But what the president must stop doing is making promises and talking and making undertakings that he has absolutely no intention of keeping. People in South Africa are very frustrated. We have a pandemic sweeping the country with coronavirus, but we've now had an epidemic outbreak of corruption. And it has to be a line drawn somewhere. And it's got to move away from words and got to start with action.
Sorry to circle back to this, but it goes back to that earlier question about how a debate in Parliament would bring us closer to that point if many of the other ongoing processes have not moved us in that direction. The risk, some South Africans would say, is that we'll be subjected to another sitting where for hours politicians are debating an issue, but really, in terms of real change on the ground, nothing is happening.
Well, Parliament is the arena in which the Constitution says we must hold him accountable. I think the President must account. And I think Parliament is the right place for him to do so. And I think that Parliament must put the President on terms and start getting tough on putting the President on terms.
Okay.
I'm very heartened by the words of the Speaker last week, who's asked Parliament to start asking the tough questions. Well, here's an opportunity for us to put these tough questions to the President, to engage with them robustly in a debate. Throughout this entire crisis, he has avoided questions from the media. He doesn't take questions after his press conferences. And so, therefore, Parliament is the right arena for us to be able to, as the elected public representatives of the country, to hold him accountable for what he has promised in the past and for what he has said, but also what is happening on his watch as the head of state. He is where the buck stops. And it is right that he answers questions in the House tasked with holding him accountable.
DA Interim Leader John Steenhuisen, thank you for your time.